Longtime viewers of this channel will know that I have a very deep interest in the Fatima message, and the consecration of that country requested or ordered by heaven as part of the Fatima message. And I am a firm believer that we never got the third secret of Fatima, let alone the actual consecration of that country, at least not done validly. The country in question is to be named alone. That's it. Done in union with all the bishops of the world. That has clearly not been done yet. If it had been done, we had been assured by Sister Lucia over the years, before she went silent and started saying some really wild stuff after, leading many to conclude that that wasn't the real Sister Lucia. I'll leave you to decide for yourself if you believe that or not. But she herself said, when the consecration was done properly in accordance with the will of heaven, that country in question would be converted to Catholicism, and peace would reign. We would avoid whatever chastisement, materially speaking, we kind of all sense that we're barreling towards, let alone the spiritual chastisement that was very clearly aimed at the Council Fathers, since the Pope of 1960 was the one who was supposed to do the consecration. You may have wondered why that Pope, John the 23rd, never did a consecration. Malachi Martin here has an uncomfortable truth for you, and he will tell you in his own words, with his own voice, why John the 23rd never did the consecration. And not only why did John the 23rd not do it, but also why Pope Paul VI never did it either, and why John Paul II never did the consecration as requested. And he has a very low opinion of that consecration that John Paul II did. His opinion on that is actually echoed later by the now late exorcist, Father Gabriel Amorth, who himself said was at that 1984 consecration that many John Paul II's biggest fans, those who were part of that following of his that led to his canonization, they will not like his opinion on it, which was, as Father Amorth said later, he was there, that country in question was never mentioned, and he was afraid to mention the country in question. And he was clearly being manipulated by the people around him. That was Father Amorth's opinion on it. Malachi Martin has a little less friendly opinion on that. But here's Father Malachi Martin, in his own words, on the consecration of that country in accordance with the Fatima message and why it was never done.
The Queen of Heaven gave a mandate. She said, consecrate to me on one day, all you bishops together, and we convert it to Catholicism. I mean, it doesn't really convert it. We'll become Catholic, and Marxism will be finished. And there'll be no chance. If you don't do that, my son is going to punish you all. And John the 23rd, and Paul VI, and John Paul II, all three neglected this. John the 23rd said, the children didn't know what they were saying. And anyway, I'm talking with Nikita Khrushchev, this is 1960, 1962, and he will allow observers to come to my Vatican Council if I don't condemn Marxism. And therefore John Richard didn't allow the fathers of the council to condemn Marxism. And he certainly would not publish he said, we will not publish this letter ever. It will never be published. And I will not consecrate, because if I did that, Nikita Khrushchev would know, and he'd consider it an act of war. All the bishops, Catholic bishops, gathered in a place, 2,700 of them in the Vatican, and they condemn Marxism, Soviet Marxism. Come on, it's war. There's going to be persecution. That's John 23rd reason. Paul VI simply was afraid of his own shadow, and besides, he didn't believe in Fatima. John Paul II sort of believed in Fatima, sort of. He didn't quite believe in Fatima. And he decided that he couldn't do it because he wasn't the Pope of 1960. And Lucia had originally said the Pope of 1960 must do the consecration. So he did nothing about it. In fact, he permitted the suppression of Sister Lucia, and permitted the suppression of the message of Fatima to a large extent throughout the Church, because his Secretary of State, Casaroli, who is an atheist as far as I'm concerned, he exercised himself as Secretary of State through all Vatican representatives to suppress Fatima as much as possible. For instance, the apostolic delegates in Lisbon and his entire staff were very favorable to Fatima. Casaroli changed them all and put in somebody who was not sympathetic. And so on and went on with that. So why is it that these three popes, the last three popes, refused? And when John Paul II was asked to now consecrate, no, all he could do was kneel in St. Peter's Square, and in the middle of a consecration of the human race, the Immaculate Heart of Mary, he said, and also we consecrate to her care the people who are awaiting their consecration to her Immaculate Heart. What kind of gobbledygook is that? For me, that's gobbledygook, and disgusts me on John Paul II's lips. He's supposedly a knight of the Immaculate Queen. He's supposedly a member of Maximilian Kolbe's group of knights fighting, and he wouldn't do this. So I mean, I think it all goes back to Lucifer. He just has too much power within the prelacy of the church, within the organization. He's able to squeeze everybody who attends that thing. Now, this is the Queen of Heaven. And even as John XXIII said, the Christian will declare war on us. He can say, well, you want this done, you must have some plan. Trust. No trust. No trust. So I think it is clear to me that the will of Christ is that these three popes should destroy the organization of the church, which they have. They've destroyed the organization. They've been instrumental. And they will answer for it. And in the case of John Paul II and John XXIII and Paul VI, it's malfeasance in high office. They're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to take care of that. They didn't.
The life in the church, everything about it, is tied together with the Fatima question and that period in time, 1960. Why wasn't it done? Because John the 23rd was more concerned about politics. And while Malachi Martin never invoked the prophets of doom phrase, you may have heard that, the prophets of doom John 23rd was speaking about were the Fatima messengers, the children of Fatima, and those who carried on the message after they had passed away. John the 23rd dismissed them as prophets of doom. Paul VI didn't believe it. According to Malachi Martin, even John Paul II didn't really believe it either, which will come as a shock to many people, given that he is often called like the modern Marian Pope. I don't know what to think of that personally, but many of you, I suspect, will have a hard time believing the latter, at least, that John Paul II didn't believe the Fatima message fully. But I'm curious what you have to say about this. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. And if you have read Malachi Martin's works, you'll know that he wrote an entire book called The Keys of This Blood, in which he practically painted a picture of John Paul II as a prophetic figure, a figure who would essentially bring peace to the world through uniting people of various faiths to march together under a banner of peace. When you read it now, it sounds a little bit like a more intelligent version of what Pope Francis has been trying to do. Again, Malachi Martin started out as the biggest fan of John Paul II you could imagine. He changed his opinion over time, while John Paul II was still Pope. I'm curious what you have to say about all this. So let me know in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps. So just sharing this on social media, that helps too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.